Hey everyone, this is Michael from Southern Indiana Sawmill. I want to show you this very interesting piece of equipment that I purchased about a year and a half ago that was a total nightmare to fix, but is now the machine of my dreams. Let's take a closer look. Alright guys, well this is the machine. Now this is technically a CNC mill machine. It is made by Laguna Tools, and I want to show you some of the features and benefits of it. It has a rotary axis, as you can see, and right now I have a spur drive that's fit in the center. A liquid cooled 3 horsepower spindle. Variable feed control through the VFD dial. And it also has this little touch-off tool for the Z-axis. Now this particular model of Laguna CNC lathe mill, they do not make anymore. This is an older model that I had purchased from a previous person. They do still make this model, however, at Laguna, and as most of you know, I'm not paid or promoted by anybody for any products, and so I feel that gives me an opportunity to be completely honest about the products. The mills that they make now are 60 inches, 72 inches, and I believe 96 inches, so 5 feet, 6 feet, and 8 foot length on your bed. Essentially the ones they're making nowadays have had a little bit of a redesign, but they're more or less the exact same machine as what this one is, because they still have the same type of rotary drive, they still have the liquid cooled spindle, and more or less it's the same, other than a couple little redesigns on it. Here's the thing. When I purchased this machine, I was told that it was a fully functional and working machine. And pretty much from the first time that I used it, I realized that there was a lot wrong with it. And so when I first got this thing, it was a complete and total nightmare. And I gotta tell you, I am no CNC expert. I am not a professional repair tech, and I was completely in over my head on this one. But sometimes purchasing your own equipment and getting it a little less expensive and fixing it yourself could be a really great option to build your shop. My whole shop here is what I would consider a one-man industrial facility. And that's because I have all three-phase industrial tools more or less in my shop. And the way that I've been able to do that is either by getting equipment slightly used at auction, or basically getting pieces of junk that have needed repaired. This one I thought was going to be a slightly used, good functioning machine, and when I got it, it was actually a piece of junk. I'll tell you why. So I actually had to write down on a sheet of paper all the things that I've done to this machine, because quite honestly, I would have forgotten. It's taken me so long to fix it all. So first thing I had to do was put a brand new computer and controller in the machine, and I'll show you what the controller looks like. It's a handheld device like this. That's pretty much standard on most of the Laguna machines before you get into the huge super dollar machines. And so it needed a new computer, new controller. The reason it needed that was because the old controller was obsolete. There was a software problem with the machine, and when I went to go run a program, it wouldn't run properly. I contacted Laguna. Lo and behold, no software update for the old controller. So I ended up having to buy a new computer and controller for the machine, and those two things come together usually when you order them. I had to put a new drive motor right in here in this box back here for the Z-axis to be able to go up and down. There's all kinds of misses when I was running my first projects, and it could not seem to zone in on where the Z-axis was, and the reason that was is because that motor was actually going bad in there. It was pretty much destroyed from the inside, and so I had to replace that. I had to put a new liquid cooled spindle on the machine. So on Laguna and several machines that are just pretty much like Laguna, they all use about the same kind of liquid cooled spindle on them, and it's actually kind of a good thing, because what I was able to find was a taller spindle that allowed me to get better control of my Z-axis on this machine. The old one, to get all the way down to center with some of the tooling I had to be pretty much bottomed out in the collar of the machine, and this taller one allows me to set it just right. So that's actually a good thing, but the bearings on the old spindle were pretty much shot, and so those needed to be replaced. I had to fix a whole bunch of wires on the inside of the machine that were all eaten up. I believe by mice were the culprit on that, considering the mice droppings that I found to accompany the wires. I had to relocate. There's a little control board on the VFD. The VFD, that's a variable frequency drive, actually sits inside of this cabinet on the other side. There's a door in the back side of the machine where you access all of the computer controlled fuses and all of that in the back. And so there's that little panel, and I relocated that VFD panel to the front of the machine, and you'll see the picture of that there, so that I would be able to have better control over the spindle speed. Quite honestly, I'm not sure how they controlled spindle speed before, because there was no way to even access that. I had to do a complete software update on the new controller, set all of the XYZ parameters. You know, if you're off a decimal point, it can make a pretty big difference in the way that the machine actually behaves, because it is running code, and if it thinks something is this big when it's really that big, or think it's this far away when it's really that far away, that can create problems. And so I had to basically troubleshoot that with a lot of tech help support and whatnot to get that all done. I relocated. There's this little touch-off tool which I could not live without. Whenever you program your software, somewhere in there it's going to tell you where your zero is, and that there gets me exactly where I want to be, whether it's on top of the material or a specific 0 point on the machine. I was able to get it, so on my tailstock I set the Z on my tailstock, and that's how I hit 0, is off of my tailstock, because I got the dimension from the top of the tailstock to dead center on the machine, and I'm within about 5 thousandths of an inch excuse me, on that Z. Then I just had to do basically an all-around cleanup surface. There's some surface rust, dirt, old finish from whatever projects they'd been working on in the past, and I just basically went around and cleaned up the whole machine. So if you've seen this and you say, oh well, you know, Michael, that doesn't look super clean, believe me, I went through a whole cleanup on this machine, like industrial degreaser, to get this thing to where it is right now. So from where it was when I first got it to now, it was a piece of junk, and now it works really super well. Now here's the thing, I wish that I could say that this was only a couple hours of work to do all this, but like I said, I was in over my head. I mean, I was underwater. I am not a CNC repair tech, and if you don't have wiring diagrams and all that, it's almost impossible to figure out how to fix stuff. So there was a lot of wire chasing. There was a lot of struggling. There was quite honestly some times where I'd practically given up on the machine and thought, I even had it listed on Marketplace and tried to sell it for several months. I had one interested buyer. A lot of people looked at the machine, but quite honestly, most people had no idea what it even was when they were looking at it, and so that made it kind of difficult to sell. But eventually I reached a point where I thought, you know what, I can make a lot of really cool stuff on a machine like this. And so I decided the best route for me was to repair it and hopefully find projects that I can build with it and use it to make really unique and special things that I couldn't make on any other machine. Well, what kind of things can I make on this machine? Well, that's an excellent question, so let's talk about that for a second. Well, first of all, one of the things that you need to understand about a machine like this is, first of all, is that it's technically a 3-axis machine, because it has an X that travels sideways, a Z that goes up and down, and then the third axis is a rotary axis. They do make true 4-axis CNC machines, so you'd have an X, a Z, a rotary, and then you'd also be able to travel this way with it. Now, this being more of a 3-axis machine limits you a little bit, but not too terribly much, at least not for the things that I want to do. The other thing that you need to understand about a machine like this is that this is technically a milling machine. It's not a lathe. And so Laguna kind of sells it and advertises it and says like lathe mill or mill lathe or something like that. But the reason it's a mill and not a lathe is because it has a router attached to the top of it, which will go more slowly across the piece. Well, what's the difference? Well, a CNC lathe is going to do things like Louisville Slugger Bats, for example, uses them. So less intricate pieces where you can duplicate things really fast. And typically you're going to have some sort of a spindle stabilization on a CNC lathe as well that is going to allow you to turn things really, really quick and do things, generally speaking, in one pass. This machine is a mill, and so it's much better at doing more intricate work. You know, things that are like carved or engraved, fancy designed images and oblong shapes. Think Queen Anne legs or things like that. So let's look at a couple of the pieces that I've made on this and kind of show you what I'm talking about. So first of all, this is the disaster piece that I had made, and I'll show you what happened there with it. You can see how horribly carved out that got, and this was because of bad parameters on the machine. But I'm going to show you what a good one looks like. In case you're wondering exactly what this is a baluster for my boys' bunk beds that I'm making. I've become really fascinated by the ball and spiral look that I can do with this, and then also the nice square tenon areas, if you will, that I'm going to be using. You see, these are the mortises for my mortise and tenon joint, so the headboard is going to go through here. But these are the sort of things that you can make. I mean, just really, really super neat, three-dimensional carvings. This takes about 4.5 to 5 hours from rough to finished cut, and this has not been sanded. It came off the machine like this, and I still have not done any finish work on it. It's going to get the ends cut off of it, and then it's going to get completely cleaned up and looking really, really super nice. But this is one of the sort of things that you can make on a machine like this. So let's show you another one. Again, I've really been practicing a lot with the spindle look. So these would be balusters for our stairs. Right now we have really, really boring looking just square balusters, and I wanted to do something that would be a little fancier. So maybe down the road we're going to do something like this. Again, this has not been sanded. It's not been finished. This is cherry that we cut on the sawmill, and you know, Lord willing, we're going to get these all the way up the stairs and redo our entire stairway. You know, the treads, the balusters, the railing, the end post, and everything. But that's another sort of thing you can do. When I very first started experimenting with the machine, I made this on it. It's just a simple turn piece. Really, you could do about anything with it. You know, you could put a base on the bottom, turn it into a candle holder, or it could be a part of a lamp, or you know, anything like that. I did sand this one. This is sapele, sometimes referred to as the African mahogany, but it's not true African mahogany. Anyhow, that's a whole nother conversation. This is what it looks like in the rough, and so I took this and I carved this on the CNC mill, and then I went to my lathe and turned the top and the bottom of this by hand. So you can even do things, you know, like that, whereas sometimes it's faster to do it a different way, or you want to create, you know, a unique shape without doing all the programming or whatnot. You can sort of use both machines. You know, as long as you have your center point on there, there's not too much that you can't do with it. Another way the machine comes in super handy is to turn pieces like this. So this is could be referred to as a massive fishing lure or something like that. But the point is that you have a taper this way, you have a taper this way. It's kind of an oblong shape. And things like this are actually fairly difficult to make by hand. They take significant time, and this machine, this CNC mill lathe, can do things like this over and over and over again, and it can do it perfectly. And so even like if you were to make this smaller, if you had like a custom fishing lure you wanted to make or something like that, I do know the previous owner used this machine for making duck calls, which is pretty neat. Really, the sky is the limit with a machine like this, is one of the reasons that I purchased it. So guys, I know there's a lot of people out there producing YouTube content, showing their machines off and things like that, and sometimes it comes across as this kind of a humble brag, and you're always wondering, how did these people ever get these machines? You know, how can they afford this kind of stuff? And I kind of told you my journey on this one. Brand new machines like this are going to run anywhere from $16,000 up to the mid $20,000 for a brand new machine. I purchased this one for pennies on the dollar of that and ended up fixing it myself and getting everything working. All in all, I would say I probably put somewhere around the neighborhood of $900 to $1,000 to get this completely up and working like it should be. But at the end of the day, for a machine like this, that's well worth it. Another reason that I post this content is because I want to see if you all are actually interested in seeing things like this. Would you be interested in me showing you, maybe beginning to end, how I would go about making something on a machine like this? Or would you be interested in other machines in the shop or stories of how I've acquired other tools that I have? It's been a process. It's probably taken me a little over 10 years to build this shop that I currently have. There's a lot of really excellent used machinery in this shop, and I'm very proud of it, to be honest with you. I haven't created this shop through sponsors, you know, or through a lot of YouTube money coming my way. And so if you want to hear more of these kind of like tool stories, how I've gotten things like that, let me know. Put that in the comments below, and I'd love to hear that. Alright guys, that's about all that I have for you. As always, I do encourage you all to subscribe to the channel. It will give you an opportunity to follow along with the content that I do produce, and hopefully give you a chance to learn a little bit about either sawmilling or the woodworking world. That's about all I got for you guys. So until next time, God bless you all, and take care of yourselves out there in this big world.